Hi folks, today we're going to be talking about, again in Module 4, we're looking at the Learning series. For this particular module, you're going to be needing your learning notes. So you'll find that in Module 4 of your folders, and it actually looks a little bit like this. So it starts off with things about reading about motivation and has a group task, which I'll take you through in a moment, but that's what that one looks like, and you'll need that for today. Welcome again to another online session of Focus on Reading. It's really good because I can run everyone through this stuff, and I hopefully won't be as nervous, which is nice. So today, as I said, Module 4, Learning. Before I go any further, I would like to pay my respects to the Indigenous people of the land we're meeting on today, the Worimi people, and pay my respect to the elders past and present. So today we're going to be looking at these professional standards, particularly this one's very worthwhile to be looking at. I mean, they're all very worthwhile, but this one is probably really relevant for our students as well. So looking at literacy strategies to meet the needs of all students, but particularly our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, special education needs, challenging behaviours, and to a lesser extent non-English speaking backgrounds. We do have a couple of those students in our school, although they don't generally make up the majority of our students, as we know. Okay, so we're going to be learning about, this is actually really, I guess, engaging for me as well. I mean, it's all very interesting Focus on Reading, but this particular is quite interesting because it is so relevant. We're looking today at motivation and what motivates our students to I guess, engage in the lesson or disengage in the lesson. So we're looking at, it says here Stage 2 and Stage 3 readers. Obviously we're still applying this to our Stage 4, 5 and 6 readers, so just kind of go with that for now. But we're looking at things like reading factual text, visual literacy, which is really important. In some particular subjects it is focused on a bit more. English do it, obviously visual arts, probably some of the TAS subjects as well, but it's certainly applicable across the range. And also different things like narrative forms, different literary texts. Ways to apply our knowledge of analysing texts and tasks, because what we're really looking at is to really make Focus on Reading work, is to kind of think about putting ourselves in our students' shoes and saying, what would I have trouble with if I was X student? What would this student have trouble with? What would this class have trouble with? And how can I address that? Of course, this will help us to choose resources for you guys to build into your programs, which I'm absolutely happy to assist with next year with additional lesson study days. And of course, really important, reflecting on changes to us, our students, and their learning overall. Okay, we've done the school pace session, which was great, and that was looking at our students with special needs. You will remember that one actually took 2 of our lessons. I think that was really important because we have so many students with special needs. They may not have a visible physical disability, but they still certainly require adjustments in their learning. Okay, moving right along. So, I guess we've got to start thinking about this. Where are we? Oh, one of the things, students photos, change of teaching practice, probably had already. Yeah. So we're looking at motivation. I've got in my training notes from when I went to the training, if it doesn't engage and motivate us as teachers, it must be difficult for students. So I think that's really important. If I'm not finding a text engaging in the English classroom, then I always wonder, is this an appropriate text? I'm not finding it interesting. Of course, we're all different, but I think we have to, and most of us do this anyway, we have to develop that ability to step into the teenager's shoes and go, hang on a minute, don't think they're going to engage with that particular text, and you've lost that lesson time, which is quite valuable. So, let me just find my notes. Oh, where are we? Wrong one. Okay. consider something you've done as part of this program. So think about something you've done as part of Focus on Reading. It might be something like using a Super 6 comprehension, teaching a Super 6 comprehension strategy explicitly to your students, and maybe using a teaching strategy like VIPs or literature circles, that sort of thing. And has it made a difference in the motivation of your students? It is okay to say no at this stage because we are just starting with this stuff. That's fine. I think as we progress, it will start to probably influence our students in a deeper way, because it's going to be able to use the language confidently, which gives them a higher sense of self-efficacy, which I will get to in a minute. But for yourself, you might think about stuff like understanding the learning needs and interests through surveys, through work on specific learning groups, okay, which might include our students with special needs, our Indigenous students, that sort of thing. Exploring curriculum requirements, okay, so looking at the, you've looked a little bit at the literacy continuum, and looking at refining your teaching, okay. Today we're going to be making connections with the quality teaching elements and dimensions, and consider what engagement and motivation means to you. So let's move along. All right, so just really briefly, consider these questions if you can read them. So when you had to learn something new, what did you find most challenging? What strategies did you use to overcome this? Consider an experience when you were engaged in something where time flew. What elements of this activity were inherently motivating? I remember, just as a personal anecdote, when I was at uni, I actually took a Diploma of Languages alongside my teaching degree. Goodness knows why, but I did Japanese language. I studied it at school, so I wanted to continue doing that. When I got to uni, I realised that that kind of learning is a lot different. It's quicker, and it requires you to learn a lot more in a lot less space of time, and learn ridiculous amounts of new characters and all that sort of thing. So I was used to the slow pace learning, not slow pace, but slower pace learning at a high school level, where you had the whole year to learn the content rather than a semester of 12 weeks or whatever. So I remember learning it, and I think I actually ended up dropping the course because it was too hard. It was too much for me to concentrate on. And I find myself to be, a pretty good reader, but learning a whole new language and a whole new grammar structure in a week was very difficult. And I always thought to myself, I think I've taken this course for a reason, even though I ended up dropping out of it. I've taken this course for a reason because now I understand how those kids in my class feel when I'm teaching them something they just don't get. They don't have that ability to engage them. Maybe they've got a receptive language disorder. Maybe they are just behind in their work from their peers for whatever reason, and now I get it. I get how hard it is, how frustrating it is, and how I wanted to be anywhere but in that lecture theatre because it was just so hard. So I was able to put that, it was a real, the history people will love this one, it was a real empathy task for me, because now I could say, yeah, I get it, I get your kids, I get where you're coming from, okay? And I think that for a native language user, native English user, as we all are, it's very easy, I think, sometimes to forget that kids who aren't or have struggles, really, it's so hard for them. So I think that was a good move, even though it was really hard and I hated that course. But it taught me something about the kids that I would meet in the future. So needless to say, I was disengaged in that course, and this is what we're talking about, engagement today. Okay, these are the daily behaviours of motivated students. These are based on a presentation by Scott Paris. Have a read through them. What do you think some of the reasons are that students fail to learn what we're trying to teach them? What sort of behaviours would you expect to see from a motivated class or a motivated student? I always used to think that a motivated class would be quiet and their heads would be down, because when I was at high school, I think the principal came in and said, look at this class, and it was dead quiet, everybody was working. They said, look how beautiful this class is. Now I've had classes where we've had lots of noise and lots of engaged discussion, and I've worried that people are going to come by and go, what is Kimberly doing in there? But it is all engaged learning, and they were highly motivated in those times. When we're playing Kahoot, for example, it's rarely a quiet moment because the kids are so engaged and motivated. But things like, thoughtful engagement in academic text is not necessarily sitting there and reading a book quietly. It may be discussing with a partner, discussing with you as the teacher. And this academic doesn't need to be a novel. It can be any kind of text. Remember, we were looking at everything as a text in our KLAs. Inquisitive orientations. That's a bit of a weird sort of couple of words, but I'm thinking we're looking at kind of a natural sense of curiosity. But again, doesn't need to be natural. You can certainly teach curiosity a little bit. You can teach students how to access texts and have that, which is questioning, okay? Thinking about how they can be more curious, which can then lead to their engagement. Positive expectations and positive attitudes, my favourite one of them all. So having a positive attitude, this learning is actually going to mean something, but that includes us having these for our kids as well, I think. Okay, so some of the reasons you might have thought about why students fail to learn the stuff we're teaching them. I sometimes marvel at why I've taught metaphors several times and yet I have students that can not understand them for whatever reason. So it may be boring or frustrating pedagogy. I know that I've had to stop myself or tell my senior students, you need to give me 10 minutes to talk to you and then you've got to tell me to stop, okay? And they would actually time me and say, Miss Hodges, it's been 10 minutes. Okay, kids, you need to get on with your own work now, okay? Because I can talk, as you can tell, I can talk for hours, but that can be very boring and frustrating. Self-handicapping motivation. Now, in my trainer notes, it's about this idea of self-efficacy. If you're not familiar with that term, it just means that it's related to self-esteem, but it's a little bit different. Self-efficacy refers to what you feel is your strength academically. For example, when I was back at uni when I was doing my degree, I worked really, really hard on this assignment. It asked for 6 references. I put in 10, I went over the top and just, nailed it. I went over the word limit and the lecturer gave me back this was the honours course. There's only 6 of us, so she did the one-on-one feedback. She gave me the marks back and she said, look, Kimberly, I'm really, I don't want you to be upset about this, but I need to tell you why you got this mark. And I said, well, it's because, and she said, it's because you've gone overboard. And that was really, really damaging to my self-efficacy because I thought, but that's what they want, people to go overboard and just enjoy it and love what they're doing, but it wasn't actually the requirement of the task. So that damaged my self-efficacy a little bit. But once I internalise that feedback, I was okay. And I think the problem with this thing is some of our kids aren't up to, okay, that was feedback that I can use, how am I going to use it to do this? They just get stuck in that, I'm crappy at maths, okay, or I suck at English, or I'm terrible at food tech. And they say it, and it breaks my heart because they're not. They just they can't be good at it the first time. This is what I always say. And also the fact of this self-regulated learning, okay? And that is something that I think they need to probably be taught. It's unusual to find a self-regulated learner who hasn't been shown how to be self-regulated. That's just what I think. Okay, so moving on. We're looking at motivational orientation, so the personality traits of the motivated person. Okay, we've got this one here. You should be able to read. The helpless orientation, where students are focused on their personal inadequacies. I've met so many students like that here and in other schools. Just say, I'm terrible at essays. Okay, well, how do you know that you've done 1 or 2 in your life? Okay, and you know, and Miss Hodges, you're great at writing essays. How come I'm not that good? And I said, well, I'm a little bit older than you, and I've had those experiences, and my first essay was not this good, I can assure you, that sort of thing. So they just sort of get stuck in this. Whereas we have other kids who are a little bit more stuck in the other way. Performance orientation. What did I get? What was my grade? Well, let me talk about what you did really well in the middle of the essay. No, I just want to know my grade. Okay, well, you got 11 out of 20. Oh, okay, and then that kid gets really cranky. And I'm trying to say to them, look, while it's a C, which is fine, that's where we need you to be, you know, you just need to work on this part, but you did this part really well, and you couldn't do that before, okay? And that's where they get stuck, and I think we need to find that very middle ground, because this is, being concerned with your grades is not a bad thing, but it should be more to do with, I got a C, but before I was getting a D, okay? Or, you know, that sort of thing, rather than being, oh, I only got a C. And of course, this stuff can sometimes be out of our control. It may be the student has an anxiety disorder, maybe they have depression, maybe they're not able to self-regulate their feelings. And that's a little bit beyond our control, but we can certainly make it a little bit easier for them to digest and teach them some strategies around that. So I always sort of, just really quickly, I always just give, if I, you know, do the feedback one-on-one and call the kids to my desk, I don't actually show them their mark before I talk to them. I talk to them first and say, you know what, you had an amazing introduction in this essay. It really, really flowed well. You had this and that and this and that. It was great. In your middle part, you just didn't quite connect it back to the introduction, or you didn't have enough links to text. And by that stage, they're feeling okay because you've said something really positive to them that they couldn't do before. Okay, I noticed you couldn't write introductions before. Now look at it, you're doing it on your own. That's amazing. Okay, and then I give them their result. So try and limit this sort of stuff. Okay, the mastery orientation. Oh, hang on, sorry. Yep, so it's just the stuff that I was speaking about, okay? It might be that helpless orientation. You might have the kids saying, well, you didn't teach us this, okay? You know, you didn't tell us this was on the test, that sort of stuff. With performance orientation, if they're only concerned with their grades, we get less intrinsic motivation, okay? Rather than achieving for the fact of achieving, because you like to achieve, you're only achieving to get A's. To what end, okay? Sorry, hang on, I'm just having a look at my notes. Sorry, folks. It just asks us to think about a student that's been in that sort of situation. Okay, so in your participant workbook, you will find on page 2 to 16, so it's quite a long reading. Where are we? It's called Reading About Motivation. That's it there. Okay. And it says this task involves the reading. It asks us to do it into groups, but we can't obviously do that. Asks the reading of an article about motivating struggling and all readers in a mainstream class. It's been set up as a task to be completed in 3 groups, but we're not going to do that. So take some time in the next couple of days to actually read through this particular article. It's actually really, really informative. And just getting this particular meaningfulness, okay, making our learning meaningful is so important. Why are we doing this? Because X, okay. I've been reading a lot about 8 ways of learning, which is, I haven't done any formal training on it, but just been reading the wiki space, and that really is really important for our Indigenous students. Why are we doing this? And there's a part of the 8 ways that says, what's it called? Links to community, I think that's what it's called. But there's a fella up at, it's either Walgett or Wilcannia, I think it might be Wilcannia Central School. He actually adapted it because Wilcannia is a very Indigenous township. So he adapted those 8 ways goals for his students, so he used language they're more familiar with, and that one was show your mob. Okay, so the significance for those students was now I'm going to take this knowledge that I've got at school and show my family, my extended family, and see if that can help them. Okay, so he's doing like a sustainability unit. how to manage fish and all that sort of thing, and wildlife, and that was something that they could then show their mob, okay? And for our non-Indigenous students, your mob is anybody, okay? Anybody that you are connected with, okay? So 8 Ways is just amazing. Just been really reading about it a lot, but meaningfulness really connects with motivation. But yeah, I really encourage you to have a read of that. It's there for you to look at in your own time. Okay, so rocketing through, because this was doing it in a group, so we're going to go past that. Okay, reading text, in-depth. All right, so page 17 on your participant notes. We're going to be looking at factual and literary text in more detail. I'll try and get through this nice and quickly, but you can use this stuff to analyse the text that you use in your KLA, okay, and what strengths and what weaknesses and things that you can see in your text. Now, on page 20, what might make a text challenging for readers? So invaluable, okay? Vocabulary, abstraction, lexical density, formatting, graphics, photos, and unusual features. So they're the stuff we need to start thinking about when we're looking at text with our kids. Because if we can teach them how to access those texts, we're going to start to bring up our comprehension and our engagement. All right, moving along. Okay, visual text. I'm going to go through this really, really quickly because it's applicable to all KLAs, and I'm mindful of the time. I'm trying to keep these to 30 minutes and under. So visual literacy is the ability to read a visual text, so a picture, okay, or an advertisement, or a food label, or a poster, okay. There is a potential to misread the information, and it requires sophisticated reading skills. So we always, when we teach visual literacy in English, we teach kids about things like vector lines, salient image, the main part of the image, the framing, the positioning, all that sort of stuff, okay? And that gives them the tools then to start saying, that's the salient image, miss, that's their favourite one, because they can spot it all the time. The arm there is working as a vector, great, but that's a very higher order level thinking skill, and it takes that time to be able to teach it effectively. So factual texts, so if you're looking at a factual text, particularly things like history, geography, food tech, PE, English to a lesser degree, any of your tech subjects would have these. So there's photographs, diagrams, graphs, maps, of maths as well, sorry, maps and tables, okay, but they can also include video clips, sounds, interactive visuals. So we need to teach our kids that these are part of the text. This is all still a text. I always teach my kids that a picture is a text. Just because it doesn't have any words on it does not mean it's not a text. So we're going to think about text in that kind of postmodern-y way of thinking about it, that everything is now a text that we can deconstruct. We've got to think about the layout. What's the layout telling us, kids, about what we need to know in this? Why is the title bold? Simple as that. Well, because it's a title, yes, but why do we need to see it in bold? Okay, and so you get kids thinking about, oh, well, maybe it's important to be eye-catching. Why is text within, parts of the text within the whole text bold? Well, that's important, it needs to stand out, blah, 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 blah. Boxes and bubbles. Most kids, just from my qualitative asking of them, don't read what's in those little boxes. I'm just seeing if I've got a text with one. It's down here in A4, not on me, but they have, if you've got a factual text and it has a jump out box, and it might have 3 facts about what you've just read in the summary, they won't read it. I don't know why, but they don't read it. So we need to teach them that is very important information. Often in the NAPLAN test, the question will be about what's in the box. So they've read the whole text, they're all good, and they cannot find that information because it's in the bit they didn't read. I'm going to Google, yeah, so I'm going to pop this link. It's from YouTube, and it's very, very funny. It's a little boy with an actual print book, and he's going, I can't make the pictures bigger, I can't flick through, it's hilarious. I'll pop that up. But it's very important because we're getting kids with, background in that technology coming into our classrooms. We've got a great, what do they call these? Not a topographic map. Oh, I can't remember. Maybe it'll tell me. I did them at school and I can't remember what they're called. It's a rainfall graph. And at the top it says climate map for Darwin. Okay, we've got our average temperature and the average rainfall with the graph and our months of the year, but only represented by the first letter. This is an uncommon text. Think about the challenges for our kids. I mean, if they saw that, would they even know what it was? Those kids that haven't studied geography yet probably wouldn't know, okay? The only thing that they could probably see, if they were looking really closely, my eyes go straight to the middle because we're getting the salient image. It's the biggest part. I'm like, wow, it's a graph, okay? But what's it a graph of? And it took me a little while when I first looked at this. Hang on, what was this again? Where is this for? And it's way up the top, climate graph for Darwin. So to access this text, these kids need to know what it means by climate, so weather, where Darwin is, okay, if they don't know, and some of our students don't, what these all mean, JFMA, if they don't know that, there's nothing to say, does it say month anywhere? No. So that's using that, they have to make connections there, and if they don't have anything to connect it to, you've got loss of comprehension, okay? So right now I know that that's the months of the year because I've seen it on calendars. I've seen graphs like this before, and I've not taught geography, but I've been in geography class. But if they haven't, they don't know might not know what this means, okay? What does the wet season, dry season mean? Temperature in degrees Celsius. If they're not familiar with that, they might have trouble with that. Rainfall in millimetres, okay? So they're all different parts of the text that our students could have trouble with. What questions would you ask to support students interpreting the visual image? I'd probably get the students to come up with their own questions, which is the questioning strategy. Right here. So I would actually get them to come up with probably their own questions. Okay, what sort of things do I want to know from this text? Okay, what kind of graph is it? All right. Okay, really quickly, websites are problematic for some students. I hazard a guess to say probably nearly all of them, because while they see them all the time, they don't really know how to read them, okay? The fact that you've got a navigation bar here, you've got your information, but you've also got images and links that are important as well. Now, when they get into NAPLAN, again, they only read this middle bit. They don't read the jump out boxes. Again, I'm not really sure why. We need to teach them to do that. You've got to read everything, kids. In particular, I try and get them to start with this stuff because it gives you a bit of a summary. Oh, okay, this is going to be about electricity. Okay, how do I know? It's the third little point there. Okay, and that's another one too, but I'm mindful of the time, so I'm going to go quickly. Just be mindful that with text that include visuals, the reading is often non-linear. It's not the same as reading a book. It's often more to do with engaging with the images and reading the text that is there and interpreting how the visuals are set out. I am going to skip ahead quite a lot. So just bear with me while I go to this slide. These are all the books that are on the Premier's Reading Challenge, and what is very popular for the kids. Actually, I'll just really quickly go through this because I've just noticed that it is to do with context and text. In English, this is sort of, I guess, second nature for us. In other KLAs, maybe not so much. Every text comes with a context. So every text that is created at any time anywhere has a context. And I tell the kids the context means what's going on in the life of the author. Okay, and it always influences the text. For example, the text, I'm thinking my year 11s, a couple of years ago, we'd studied Billy Elliot, and I always said to them, context is so important. What is influencing this movie? It's all set in the time of Margaret Thatcher, okay? So why does Billy feel this way, okay? Because in his context, that's what's going on around him, and it influences everything. We always have our own context. Oops, sorry. As readers, and I always say to the kids, context is the sunglasses which you see the world. Now everyone's got different sunglasses, and mine will be different to yours, because everything that we go through in our lives creates our sunglasses. Okay, so we see the world in different ways because of the things we experience. Yeah, we have to read more. Our kids need to be reading more. I'll get to that in a sec. Our kids need to be reading more. I'm going to try and start next year just a program of reading with my Year 7 students. We do a lot of reading in English, but we need to actually sit down with extended texts and read for pleasure, because that improves everything. Vocabulary, understanding, comprehension, everything's improved with reading more. Back to, again, types of evidence. Okay, we know that, it says to emphasise once again, we know that it is not just NAPLAN. Okay, so next year we might not see a major, I hope we do, but we may not see a major increase in NAPLAN for comprehension and reading. As I said, I hope we do, but we may not. And that's okay, because we've only just started, and we know from our other stuff that we are making a difference. Work samples, particularly. Video footage, our kids engaging with the text, which we're going to focus more on next year as well. Don't forget to keep gathering any evidence, even if it's just anecdotal. You can store that evidence of student change at the end of your Module 4 participant booklet. So I've written down something that's changed for me is engagement in extended response writing. Okay, because they're writing it, starting to write things independently. Now that I've taught them, I used to teach the sexy paragraph, so statement, explain, example, evaluate, conclude. Now I've taught them teak paragraphing, and once they hear teak across the school, and they have started to, they're starting to go, wow, this is something that I can use. I know teak, I know what teak stands for, and that's ownership, and that's such a great way of seeing their engagement with the learning. That's it, folks. I'll just click to the end. Yep. That is it. If you have any questions, please hit me up on the iTunes U. And thank you for watching.